Section 9 of Hunger by Knut Hamsun, translated by George Egerton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Part 3, continued. Good evening. Good evening, she answers. Excuse me, was she looking for anything? I had noticed her before. Could I be of assistance to her in any way? Begged pardon, by the way, so earnestly for inquiring. Yes, she did not quite know. No one lived inside that door besides 3 or 4 horses and myself. It was, for that matter, only a stable and a tinker's workshop. She was certainly on a wrong track if she was seeking anyone there. At this she turns her head away and says, I am not seeking for anybody. I am only standing here. It was really only a whim. She stops. Indeed, really, she only stood there, just stood there, evening after evening, just for a whim's sake. That was a little odd. I stood and pondered over it, and it perplexed me more and more. I made up my mind to be daring. I jingled my money in my pocket, and asked her, without further ado, to come and have a glass of wine some place or another. In consideration that winter had come, ha, ha! It needn't take very long. But perhaps she would scarcely. Ah, no, thanks. She couldn't well do that. No, she couldn't do that. But would I be so kind as to accompany her a little way? It was rather dark to go home now, and she was rather nervous about going up Karl Johan after it got so late. We moved on. She walked at my right side. A strange, beautiful feeling empowered me. The certainty of being near a young girl. I looked at her the whole way along. The scent of her hair, the warmth that irradiated from her body, the perfume of woman that accompanied her, the sweet breath every time she turned her face towards me, everything penetrated in an ungovernable way through all my senses. So far I just caught a glimpse of a full, rather pale face behind the veil, and a high bosom that curved out against her cape. The thought of all that hidden beauty, which I surmised lay sheltered under the cloak and veil, bewildered me, making me idiotically happy without any reasonable grounds. I could not endure it any longer. I touched her with my hand, passed my fingers over her shoulder, and smiled imbecilely. How queer you are, said I. Am I, really? In what way? Well, in the first place, simply, she had a habit of standing outside a stable door, evening after evening, without any object whatever, just for a whim's sake. Oh, well, she might have her reason for doing so. Besides, she liked staying up late at night. It was a thing she had always had a great fancy for. Did I care about going to bed before 12? If there was anything in the world I hated, it was going to bed before 12 o'clock at night. Ah, there you see. She too was just the same. She took this little tour in the evenings when she had nothing to lose by doing so. She lived up in St. Olav's Place. Yahali! I cried. I beg pardon. I only said Yahali. It's all right. Continue. She lived up in St. Olav's Place, lonely enough, together with her mother, to whom one couldn't talk because she was so deaf. Was there anything odd in her liking to get out for a little? No, not at all, I replied. No? Well, what then? I could hear by her voice that she was smiling. Hadn't she a sister? Yes, an older sister. But, by the way, how did I know that? She had gone to Hamburg. Lately? Yes, 5 weeks ago. From where did I learn that she had a sister? I didn't learn it at all, I only asked. We kept silence. A man passes us with a pair of shoes under his arm. Otherwise, the street is empty as far as we can see. Over at the Tivoli a long row of colored lamps are burning. It no longer snows, the sky is clear. Gracious, don't you freeze without an overcoat? Inquires the lady, suddenly looking at me. Should I tell her why I had no overcoat? Make my sorry condition known at once, and frighten her away? as well first as last. Still, it was delightful to walk here at her side and keep her in ignorance yet a while longer. So I lied. I answered, "No, not at all." And in order to change the subject, I asked, "Have you seen the menagerie in the Tivoli?" "No," she answered. "Is there really anything to see?" Suppose she were to take it into her head to wish to go there, into that blaze of light, with the crowd of people. Why, she would be filled with shame. I would drive her out again. With my shabby clothes and lean face. Perhaps she might even notice that I had no waistcoat on. Ah, no. There is sure to be nothing worth seeing. And a lot of happy ideas occurred to me, of which I at once made use. A few sparse words, fragments left in my desiccated brain. What would one expect from such a small menagerie? On the whole, it did not interest me in the least to see animals in cases. These animals know that one is standing staring at them. They feel hundreds of inquisitive looks upon them, are conscious of them. No, I would prefer to see animals that didn't know one observed them. Shy creatures, that nestle in their lair, and lie with sluggish green eyes, and lick their claws, and muse, eh? Yes, I was certainly right in that. It was only animals in all their peculiar fearfulness and peculiar savagery that possessed a charm. The soundless, stealthy tread in the total darkness of night, the hidden monsters of the woods, the shrieks of a bird flying past, the wind, the smell of blood, the rumbling in space, in short, the reigning spirit of the kingdom of savage creatures hovering over savagery, the unconscious poetry. But I was afraid this bored her. The consciousness of my great poverty seized me anew and crushed me. If I had only been in any way well enough dressed to have given her the pleasure of this little tour in the Tivoli, I could not make out this creature, who could find pleasure in letting herself be accompanied, up the whole of Carl Johann Street, by a half-naked beggar. What, in the name of God, was she thinking of? And why was I walking there, giving myself airs, and smiling idiotically at nothing? Had I any reasonable cause, either, for letting myself be worried into a long walk by this dainty, silken-clad bird? Mayhap it did not cost me an effort. Did I not feel the ice of death go right into my heart, at even the gentlest puff of wind that blew against us? Was not madness running riot in my brain, just for lack of food for many months at a stretch? Yet she hindered me from going home to get even a little milk into my parched mouth, a spoonful of sweet milk that I might perhaps be able to keep down. Why didn't she turn her back on me and let me go to the deuce? I became distracted. My despair reduced me to the last extremity. I said, "Considering all things, you ought not to walk with me. I disgrace you right under every one's eyes, if only with my clothes. Yes, it is positively true, I mean it." She starts, looks up at me, and is silent. Then she exclaims suddenly, "Indeed, though!" More she doesn't say. "What do you mean by that?" I queried. "Ugh, no. You make me feel ashamed." We have not got very far now. And she walked on a little faster. We turned up University Street, and could already see the lights in St. Olav's Place. Then she commenced to walk slowly again. "I have no wish to be indiscreet," I say, "but won't you tell me your name before we part? And won't you, just for 1 second, lift up your veil so that I can see you? I would be really so grateful." A pause. I walked on in expectation. "You have seen me before," she replies. "Ylajali," I say again. "Beg pardon? You followed me once for half a day, almost right home. Were you tipsy that time?" I could hear again that she smiled. "Yes," I said. "Yes, worse luck, I was tipsy that time. That was horrid of you." And I admitted contritely that it was horrid of me. We reach the fountains. We stop and look up at the many lighted windows of number 2. "Now you mustn't come any farther with me," she says. "Thank you for coming so far." I bowed. I daren't say anything. I took off my hat and stood bareheaded. I wonder if she will give me her hand. Why don't you ask me to go back a little way with you? She asks, in a low voice, looking down at the toe of her shoe. Great heavens, I reply, beside myself. Great heavens, if you only would. Yes, but only a little way. And we turn around. I was fearfully confused. I absolutely did not know if I were on my head or my heels. This creature upset all my chain of reasoning, turned it topsy-turvy. I was bewitched and extraordinarily happy. It seemed to me as if I were being dragged enchantingly to destruction. She had expressly willed to go back. It wasn't my notion. It was her own desire. I walk on and look at her and get more and more bold. She encourages me, draws me to her by each word she speaks. I forget for a moment my poverty, my humble position, my whole miserable condition. I feel my blood course madly through my whole body, as in the days before I caved in, and resolved to feel my way by a little ruse. By the way, it wasn't you I followed that time, said I. It was your sister. Was it my sister? She questions, in the highest degree amazed. She stands still, looks up at me, and positively waits for an answer. She puts the question in all sober earnest. Yes, I replied. That is to say, it was the younger of the two ladies who went on in front of me. The youngest, aha! She laughed out all at once, loudly, heartily, like a child. Oh, how sly you are! You only said that just to get me to raise my veil, didn't you? Ah, I thought so. But you may just wait till you are blue first, just for punishment. We began to laugh and jest. We talked incessantly all the time. I did not know what I said, I was so happy. She told me that she had seen me once before, a long time ago, in the theatre. I had then comrades with me, and I behaved like a madman. I must certainly have been tipsy that time too, more's the shame. Why did she think that? Oh, I had laughed so. Really? Ah, yes, I used to laugh a lot in those days. But now not any more. Oh, yes, now too. It is a splendid thing to exist, sometimes. We reached Carl Johann. She said, "Now we won't go any farther," and we returned through University Street. When we arrived at the fountain once more, I slackened my pace a little. I knew that I could not go any farther with her. "Well, now you must turn back here," she said, and stopped. Yes, I suppose I must. But a second after, she thought I might as well go as far as the door with her. Gracious me, there couldn't be anything wrong in that, could there? No, I replied. But when we were standing at the door, all my misery confronted me clearly. How was one to keep up one's courage when one was so broken down? Here I stood before a young lady, dirty, ragged, torn, disfigured by hunger, unwashed, and only half clad. It was enough to make one sink into the earth. I shrank into myself, bent my head involuntarily, and said, "May I not meet you any more then?" I had no hope of being permitted to see her again. I almost wished for a sharp no, that would pull me together a bit and render me callous. "Yes," she whispered softly, almost inaudibly. "When?" "I don't know." A pause. "Won't you be so kind as to lift your veil, only just for a minute?" I asked, "so that I can see whom I've been talking to, just for a moment, for indeed I must see whom I have been talking to." Another pause. "You can meet me outside here on Tuesday evening," she said. "Will you?" "Yes, dear lady, if I have permission to." "At 8 o'clock." "Very well." I stroked down her cloak with my hand, merely to have an excuse for touching her. It was a delight to me to be so near her. "And you mustn't think all too badly of me," she added. She was smiling again. "No." Suddenly she made a resolute movement and drew her veil up over her forehead. We stood and gazed at one another for a second. "Ylajali!" I cried. She stretched herself up, flung her arms round my neck, and kissed me right on the mouth, only once, swiftly, bewilderingly swiftly, right on the mouth. I could feel now her bosom heaved. She was breathing violently. She wrenched herself suddenly out of my clasp, called a good night, breathlessly, whispering, and turned and ran up the stairs without a word more. The hall door shut. It snowed still more the next day. A heavy snow, mingled with rain, great wet flakes that fell to earth and were turned to mud. The air was raw and icy. I woke